Hello everyone, and welcome to Chapter 8, which is going to be all about rational expressions and rational functions. And the first section is dealing exclusively with multiplying and dividing rational expressions. Pretty much what this whole chapter is going to be about is a good amount of factoring and a good amount of fractions. So, keys for any sort of operations with rational expressions are correct factoring. I can't stress that enough. Most of the time a will be equal to 1, so usually we are okay with those. Occasionally it won't be, so we'll still have to make sure that we factor correctly. We need to watch what operation we're doing, whether it's multiplication, division, addition, or subtraction. We'll get into those other two, the addition and subtraction, in the next section. This section is just going to have multiplication and division. And occasionally we will have maybe some addition and multiplication, or maybe some addition and division. So we just got to make sure that we're watching our operations. And our last thing is list your excluded values as you go. So anything that makes your denominator 0, make sort of like a running list off on the side, just so that you don't miss anything along the way. So let's take a look. So occasionally we'll just have to simplify. There's no actual operations going on. However, I do have an exponent, so I want to make sure I distribute that to my product. So in my numerator, I've got 24, a to the 5th, b to the 2nd, over 2 to the 4th, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, gets us 16. I've got a to the 4th and b to the 4th. At this point, I can simplify fractions as I normally would. So 8 goes into 24 and 16. So it goes into the numerator 3 times, goes into the denominator twice. A to the 5th over a to the 4th is just a in my numerator. 5 minus 4 is positive 1. 2 minus 4 is negative 2, so I do have a b squared in my denominator. My excluded values, a and b are not equal to 0. Though I don't have an a in my denominator here, I did at one point, so that's kind of my running list. So both of those pieces are my answer. So we see in this next one we are going to have to factor. We cannot just cross pieces out because we're not looking at a product. Here we are looking at a product, so yes, you can kind of look piecewise. Once you have a plus or minus sign to separating things, you cannot just cross things out as you go. You need to factor. So I need a product of negative 5 and a sum of positive 4. So x plus 5, x minus 1, over x squared minus 25 is a difference of two squares, so plus in one, minus in the other. I'll get my list going for my excluded values. So this would be a negative 5 excluded value, and this would be a 5 excluded value. Check to see if there's anything in the numerator and denominator that's exactly the same. We can cross those out as those simplify to 1, and anything left over is our answer. And if we had multiple things left over, we would actually leave it factored. So x minus 1 over x minus 5, and x is not equal to negative 5 or 5. Next one, our numerator does not factor, it's just an x plus 2. Denominator, I need a product of 4 and a sum of negative 4. So in order to get that, both my numbers have to be negative to get that positive product. I'm looking, I see x cannot equal 2 because of both of these guys. And here there actually is nothing common between my numerator and denominator. So both of these two put together get me my answer. In this next one, let's look at the denominator first. So I need a product of 6 and a sum of 5. So I know that's going to be 3 and 2. My excluded values, negative 3 and negative 2, as both of those would get me a denominator of 0. Now this numerator kind of looks funny. Usually we're used to seeing like a or x as the first term. And in this case, and occasionally it will be the case, we can factor out a negative 1, because if I factor out a negative 1, I've got negative a squared minus 9. That looks more like something I'm used to, plus that factors into something that we'll be able to simplify with our denominator. So I've got a negative a plus 3, a minus 3, all over a plus 3, a plus 2. Nothing changed with my excluded values as my denominator stayed the same, but both of these can cancel out. So I have an overall answer of negative a minus 3 over a plus 2. And it's really up to you. If you would like to distribute this negative to my numerator and my denominator, you can, or you could just leave it out in front. Multiplying. So remember, when we're multiplying fractions, we're just multiplying across. You can simplify sort of as you go, like if you see, oh, 6 and 8, I can take out a 2 from both of those, I can simplify some x's. You are more than welcome to. For sake of illustration, I'm not going to at the moment, so I'm just going to multiply straight across. So I've got 18 x to the 5th y squared over 8 x to the 4th y squared. Now I'm looking at these and I see, alright, well, 18 and 8, both divisible by 2, so I also see that x and y are not equal to 0, because those are both regular things in my denominator. So 9 over 4, a 5 minus 1 is just a positive 1, so I have 1x left in my numerator, and a y squared over y squared, both cancel out. So all I am left with is 9x over 4, where x and y both cannot equal 0. Another one we will have to factor, so factor each piece individually. I like to kind of write them above and below for some reason. Just kind of a habit I got into a long time ago. If you want to rewrite it on the side, you are more than welcome to. This just helps me sort of put my excluded values right away, so I don't go too far without taking those into account. So I've got everything factored. I have excluded values of, here I have negative 3, here I have negative 2, here I have a 0, and here I have negative 1. Alright, I see within my own fraction here, I can simplify as I go. I can also do that if I just sort of connect my two fraction bars. I see that there's an x plus 1 and an x plus 1, both in my numerator and denominator, as well as my x plus 2. So in my numerator, all that's left is x minus 5. All that's left in my denominator is just x. You can write these all out off on the side and then cross them out. However, I find that if you write them kind of above and below, it kind of saves some room. I was always all for saving room on my homework, so you're more than welcome to do that. And then we've already taken care of our excluded values, so that problem is done. On to dividing. So remember, with dividing fractions, you leave the first alone, you change the division to multiplication, and then you flip your second fraction. And then it just becomes a regular multiplication problem. So then we just have AD over BC, and then if we have any common factors, we would simplify if possible. So I see I've got x and y in my denominator, so I'm just going to write off to the side x and y are not equal to 0. Leave the first alone. Again, if you want to simplify within that, like the 2x's, you're welcome to. Change to multiplication and flip. So my denominator comes into my numerator, and my numerator goes into my denominator. You are welcome to, of course, simplify at that point, but I'm just going to multiply across just like we did on the one above. So I've got 10 x to the 5th y to the 4th over 18 x to the 3rd y to the 3rd. So both of these are divisible by 2. So I've got 5 over 9 x to the 5th over x to the 3rd simplifies to x squared, and then y to the 4th over y to the 3rd just gives me y. So this chapter is going to bring back a lot of things that we've seen before that are like exponent rules, and then, like I said, fractions and factoring are favorites. I would recommend, particularly with division, do factor above and below, just so that way you take care of your excluded values, because both zeros of my numerator and denominator are going to be excluded values for me. Nothing on my left-hand side factors, but on my right-hand side I can take out an 8x, and then I'm left with x minus 1. In my denominator I need a product of negative 7, sum of 6, so x plus 7, x minus 1. Write out any excluded values. So here I have an excluded value of negative 7. Here I have a negative 7 again. And here I have a 1. I might have more. I do see in my numerator and denominator I have the same exact factor. If it's within the same exact factor, you know that has to simplify to 1. Otherwise, I'll leave the first alone. Multiply and flip with whatever I have left over. If you left the x minus 1 with you, that's okay too. Now I look for anything else I can simplify within my numerator and denominator. We can kind of join fraction bars if we wish. I've got an x plus 7 that's common in both. My 8x in the denominator added an additional excluded value of 0. And I'm left with 3 over 8x. Last type of problem that we might see in this section is complex fractions. So really all this is a fraction divided by a fraction. So I would recommend writing it out for yourself. So write out what this actually is. I'm not even going to factor it yet. This helps you visualize what exactly this problem is saying, because this is a little intense. I totally agree with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and factor kind of above and below my problem. Write out my excluded values that I see at the moment. So b is unequal to, here I can't have a 0, here I also can't have a 0. I don't need to list it more than once. Leave the first alone, multiply, and flip. So I've got b minus 10, b plus 10, over b squared, leave the first alone, multiply, and flip. With this flip, I have new excluded values of 1/3 and 10. I can kind of cross-simplify if I see anything. 1b over here cancels out the one of the two over there. I've got a b minus 10 as well as another b minus 10, and everything else stays. And I do leave this as the factored form because we want it in the most simplified form, so if we wanted to do anything else with this, we would be able to. And that's it. So simplify where you can. If you need to review factoring for yourself, please do so, as it's going to be quite critical in this chapter.